Welcome to Weathered Questions, where we answer the questions on your radar.
Episode 2.4 of Weathered Questions kicks off here, and I am joined, as always, by meteorologist Jan Reichert. I'm meteorologist Kai O'Mara, and at the very tail end of episode 2.3, Jan said, you know what, we're going to talk about these cloud types as we go into 2.4. So that, Jan, is what we call a tease, and we got to make sure that we make good on that tease. So let's jump right into the cloud types here in episode 2.4.
Yeah, in the TV biz, we call it a deep tease when you tease something well ahead. You've been waiting a whole week. Let's talk clouds. All right, first up, we're going to talk stratus. We kind of talked, you heard Kai mention that in 2.3 a little bit. That's going to be one of those more horizontal clouds. So stratus, and I think Kai, you even maybe mentioned it, is a blanket of clouds. So if you're looking outside on whatever day, can be summer, can be winter, and you just see nothing but clouds and there is no definition and there's no separation of one cloud versus the next, that's what we would call a stratus layer. So again, very classic blanket style. And actually it kind of comes from Latin for blanket is what I'm told. I don't know if they had that exact term, but essentially what would have been that term kind of derives from that. So that's your stratus cloud. Just kind of a gray day. We'll get those a lot of times around warm fronts and upward motion of warm air where there's just, well, obviously all clouds come in upward motion, but just, more of that warm air, I guess. So that's our stratus basics. Cirrus is another one you heard Kai talk about there. And that's actually going to be our highest up possible clouds that we're going to get. They're made entirely out of ice crystals, and they're very important to, as meteorologists, what we call the Earth's radiation budget. So they're helping kind of bounce sunlight around and back out to space and helping both keep us warm enough and not too warm at the same time down here, but they're very thin, very wispy clouds. So sometimes you'll hear people talk about something called a mare's tail or something like that. That's a type of cirrus cloud that's very thin, very wispy, very high up in those kind of hair-like structures. And again, similar in terms of its Latin roots coming from hair-like, actually. Did you know there was so much Latin in clouds, Guy?
I sure did. There's Latin in all of them. And sometimes their scientific names are so much longer than what we're talking about right here.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a whole thing about that. There are entire books on clouds, just cloud types. So
I have a couple behind me.
Yeah. If you're cloud
obviously
enthusiast,
you can't see us on a podcast, but
and as we kind of get closer to the holidays, maybe we'll kind of discuss some good additional, weather ideas for your enthusiast in the family that are affordable and practical, as we get closer to holidays.
Another deep tease from Kai there for, a couple months.
Make good on that. Otherwise I'm going to get an email for sure.
All right. Do you know what the Latin roots for cumulus are?
Is it heap?
Yeah.
Or a
heap
pile?
or pile. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So cumulus clouds, based on that description right there, they're those little puffy kind of heaps of cloud. A lot of people will refer to them as cotton balls. And they're the ones that are just kind of floating around happy on a summer day that maybe you're looking for shapes in the clouds and you're like, that one's an elephant and that one's a giraffe and that one's a, chicken. Whatever other animal. It's always animals. We never see anything but animals.
Yeah,
isn't that
you're right?
Yeah.
Food sometimes too.
Yeah.
One of the soccer moms out at practice once said, that cloud looks like a rotisserie chicken. Not just a live chicken, but a rotisserie one with drumsticks and everything. Yes.
Well, those are going to be your cumulus clouds, and you can get a couple different varieties of those, right? They can be smaller, tiny little puffy cotton balls. They can be bigger, monstrous ones. An average fair weather cumulus cloud, which is going to be one based on that name, not giving us any bad weather. Those ones are going to weigh a lot, several hundred. Let's see, what's my analogy? I think it's like 200 elephants.
Yes.
I think that's the one I normally say, like 100 to 200 elephants of weight in a single cloud. So if you want to think about a zoo floating around in the sky, there you go. And then those cumulus clouds, basic cumulus clouds can, if they have enough upward motion under the right conditions, can grow into towering cumulus clouds or eventually a cumulonimbus cloud, which most people know is the name of our thunderheads or our thunderstorm clouds. Anytime you add that nimbus part to the cloud word, that's going to indicate rain. So nimbostratus is going to be a stratus cloud that's giving you rain. So again, that kind of gray day. Or a cumulonimbus is a cumulus cloud that has rain associated with it. That's also going to be eventually where if you were to get severe weather or a tornado or something like that, those are going to come from a cumulonimbus cloud, because those are the ones that are miles and miles tall, and just have all those different dynamics of stuff going on in them that they're able to mature enough to get lightning and thunder and rotation and circulation like that. So those are the basics. Do we want to talk about any fun ones, Guy?
Sure. Yeah. We can get into a couple of fun ones.
All right. I'll let you take the lead.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Alrighty. Well, one fun one is called a lenticular cloud. And these are often mistaken as UFOs because they look like spaceships. And what basically happens is you've got a permanent wave of some kind, generally flowing over a hill or flowing in many times over a mountaintop. And it's a standing wave is what they call it. And so what happens is condensation happens in that exact same spot. Mm-hmm. So you can almost think of it as a stream with a rock that's permanently in it. And as the water hits the rock, it flows over the top and it goes back down. If you do that with the atmosphere, you're going to get a permanent area that always condenses in that one spot. So as a result, it doesn't move much and it looks like a UFO hovering. Almost always you see these in mountainous areas. So think places like Colorado, Wyoming, Montana. Rarely are they seen around the Midwest and flat areas because there's nothing to stop the air permanently. We don't have enough obstructions around here. So that's what a lenticular cloud is all about. Hang on. Hang on.
Try again.
It's a false start. It's a 5-second penalty. Mammatus clouds. Goodness. So these are typically a sign of severe weather, and they look like upside down bubble wrap is what they are. And so, as to your point, the cumulonimbus clouds continue to grow, and that air goes up and up and up. It eventually hits something in our atmosphere called the tropopause. The air can't go any higher than that. And so it spreads out in all directions. What it typically does, though, is it'll jump into the upper atmospheric flow. And if the jet stream's blowing really hard from west to east, almost everything will go to the east when it hits the top. And it starts to spread. And what does the cold air do? It starts to sink down. And if there's any residual moisture left, you'll see pockets of cold air just kind of sink down. And it looks like upside down bubble wrap. So that's at the very least an indication that the storm next to you has a really strong updraft, which means there's a lot of air going up. And as a result, there's some sinking air around it. And it just happens to be condensing. It's going to be a humid environment and there's going to be severe weather nearby. So mammatus clouds are fun. They're not often seen. I would say I might see them once a year where I'm at. And I try, about once a year. I try and look for them. But if it's not once a year, it might be every other year that you might see some. They're not a daily occurrence. And
definitely not.
Yeah, just because a thunderstorm blows into the area, they're not going to be there either. I think they're most common kind of around isolated supercell thunderstorms where they've got the nice wind flow around them. But if it's a big line of storms, forget it. You're probably
and a lot of times, part of the reason, like they're probably forming, we just can't see them because of other clouds near the surface. And so, that would be part of it, is that they're not rare in occurrence. It's just more rare to see them or see them well, right? If to see them really beautifully defined is more rare. I feel like I see kind of, attempted formation of some more frequently, but to see those really beautiful ones, probably, like you said, once a year or even more rare than that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, and if you look at it online, you're going to see some really fun pictures, but
they're so photogenic.
They are, and they're very unique, and you'll see them and you know right away that it's not a typical cloud type that you generally be looking at. One final one, asperitas is how I pronounce it.
All right, and quick pause. I say asparagus. Asparagus. Sounds
makes
like
me
asparagus.
think of asparagus, and I don't like asparagus. So I say asperitas. So that one is kind of like a weird wave cloud. It's not really stratus. It's not really cumulus. And this was actually first termed in Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
I love that fact about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was first termed.
And
in Cedar
it's our
Rapids.
newest cloud too.
It is. And it was starting to happen more and more frequently. Essentially what the science is it's a layer of moisture that's trapped in a very shallow layer. So you've got a stable layer of air down near the ground. You've got another stable layer above it. But in, a few 100-foot area, there's just enough there that things are kind of bouncing around a little bit. And as a result, it kind of has a wave appearance. So in the slang term, they're kind of called wave clouds. And this is another one, you'll know when you see them because they do kind of look like ocean waves. And they're not Helmholtz waves. Those are something different. These are very smooth, like they look like a painting. And
like it looks like you're underwater looking up
Yes.
at like the surface of the ocean
Yes.
or something, and it's just clouds.
Yep. And they're a very shallow layer that's unstable. And what's going on is you're seeing a little bit of upward motion, but it can't grow any higher because there's another stable layer there too. So here's kind of how I think about it. If you're cleaning your counters at home and there's unfortunately this little residual layer of moisture, or maybe this is a better option. If you've got cups coming out of the dishwasher that aren't quite dry and you want to stack them up in your cupboard and you can't because there's an annoying moisture layer there. You can tell that it has ticked me off so much when I've got all the cups ready to go, but there's just a few drops in there and you can't stack them in there. Otherwise they'll never get dry. Imagine that little moisture layer in our atmosphere. That's all it takes. It doesn't take anything more than that. And the Asperitas will not precipitate. They don't have enough moisture to rain. So they're just more for photos, and they don't really indicate any harmful weather. It's just kind of like a grilled cheese sandwich of cloud. Nothing more than that.
Quick pause while I write a note to buy Kai a drying rack and a grilled cheese for Christmas.
I'm trying to actually see here. Sometimes you can see through these. They're not sometimes as thick to totally block the sunlight out either. Sometimes you can actually get a little bit of light to go through. But if you just Google search Asperitas, and even if you just take it straight from Google, newly classified chaotic wave-like cloud, resembling rough, turbulent ocean waves in the sky. So there you go. Officially added in 2017 in the International Cloud Atlas. So there you go.
The Cloud Atlas. We love. Well, all right. Hopefully that's enough clouds for everyone to appease the promise from last week. And if it wasn't, there's more. We could talk about clouds for multiple episodes. So let us know if you want to hear more cloud stuff. We'll be happy to come back to that. For now, though, we're going to move on. And we're going to talk about something that a lot of people have heard about, but know probably very little about, even though they ask about it all the time and don't necessarily know what any of it means. And even as meteorologists, we ourselves have to remind ourselves pretty much every year of, okay, which way is this going? We're talking about approaching the end of the year, and something peaks not every year, but during that kind of November, December timeframe. La Nina, El Nino. You've heard those terms probably. What do they mean for the U.S.? What's expected here as we head into the end of the year is actually that we're expected to head into a La Nina. So what does that mean, Kai?
So a La Nina pattern, what we do is we look at the equatorial Pacific Ocean. So South America points to the west near that 0 degree line. And if we've got a belt of water there that is above normal, then we consider that to be an El Nino year. If it is below normal, then we consider that to be a La Nina pattern. And there are various strengths of either one of them. A lot of folks just want to take every single extreme weather event and just blame one of the two. Mm-hmm. And, most times there is a function of one of those two happening. Though sometimes you can go into winter completely neutral and the ocean temperatures are actually right where they should be in the 30-year averages. And so as a result, we call that a neutral year, which is actually more chaotic for a forecast, I think, than having a Nina or Nino. And so what it means for the U.S., temperature-wise, we tend to get a lot colder in the northern plains, upper Midwest, and into New England. We can get drier and warmer for the southern states, and then there's usually a belt in there. And a lot of times people say, why are the storms splitting around me? Like I see the storm coming in Colorado and then it splits and it hits Ohio instead. Well, that's part of the two different branches of the jet stream. There's a polar jet, then there's a subtropical jet. The polar one stays north, the tropical one stays south. The way that La Nina operates is those jet streams are typically split over the West Coast, which means places like Washington State, Oregon, Southern Canada, Vancouver area, they can get some tremendous rain in this pattern. Tremendous rain. But the polar air is not there. The polar air is still over the Midwest or Northern Plains. And so it's kind of split off into two different chunks. And then once it, as it's called, phases together, the Ohio Valley can get some nasty snowstorms and nasty rain events. So this year's kind of looking that way. I've been seeing some folks online talking about this. I have not independently verified it myself, but I trust them that the Pacific is way warmer than normal in the North Basin. So it's below average around the equator, but it's way, way warm as you head north. So as a result, we should get a big blocking high to form there. And then you've got the Gulf of Mexico, which is also really warm right now because no hurricanes have come through.
Yeah, it hasn't been disrupted.
You get those big low pressure systems in the Ohio Valley. You know, the southern end of those things, we could have some vicious severe weather this year in the southeast U.S. Because that's a function. If the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America is really warm, the dew points are going to be higher, and that gets transported up into the southern U.S. And if it's at a record warm level now, a strong south wind is going to transport some pretty wicked moisture to the southern states. And that's a time of year, November, December, January, you can have tornado outbreaks down there in the southeast. So
you can get tornadoes at any time of the year. There's no longer a true tornado season. You can get them at any month of the year, anywhere. Maybe they're somewhat less common, but you can still get very intense, very damaging, very dangerous storms during those winter months. And this is a good setup for that, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about it is everything is still variable. All the La Nina and El Nino research does is just kind of give us a baseline of, if things are going to wiggle around a little bit, maybe it's going to return back to that orientation. So there could still be a week of, 50 degrees in January somewhere. And then you got another big Arctic front that comes through and kind of resets the pattern. So it's just an overall look and feel overall in the northern U.S. should be a colder winter this go around than what we've had last year, and especially the year prior. So that's my take on it. We'll see.
And then another reminder that cold doesn't necessarily mean more snow.
Right. Right.
And even if you are going to have more above average precipitation, you have to get both of those at the same time. And like Kai just noted, you can still have those above average weeks. So if you're getting warmer weeks where you're getting precipitation and then colder weeks without, it all has to happen at the same time, or it's not necessarily going to turn into that record crazy winter or something like that.
Right. And one final thought here on this, before we get into some trivia stuff, is just, it's a long-term thing. There's going to be variability all throughout, and no winter can be decided after a 90-day average. You still have to go through and check which weeks were active, which weeks were cold, which weeks were warm. So we'll just see how it plays out. It might be another slow start this year, and we'll see. But at the same time, if my kids can go sledding before Christmas time, they're going to be happy. So we'll see if we get any snow this early or not. But let's go ahead and get into our trivia question here. If you were paying attention to the previous part, you should be able to get this one.
You will be rewarded.
You will be rewarded for your patience and your attention. So El Nino and La Nina can impact what? A, precipitation patterns. B, marine life. C, hurricane intensity. Or is it D, all the above? Give you a chance to think about that, and we'll have the answer for you coming up.
My name's Bill. I've been a window expert at Hometown Restyling for 20 years. I love working in Eastern Iowa. These are neighborhoods I've known my whole life. I treat these homes like my own. I'm a craftsman. I want to know this job is installed correctly, that it measures up in every way. Trust your project with an expert like me. Hometown Restyling, your local residential remodeler. Visit hometownrestyling.com.
The today's trivia question.
Alrighty, you've had a chance to think about it now. We'll rehash the question one more time for those that just missed it. El Nino and La Nina can impact what? Precipitation patterns, marine life, hurricane intensity, or D, all of the above. So, Jan, what is our answer?
D, all of the above.
There you go. There you go.
So
Exactly.
you heard us talk, obviously, a little bit about the warmer, colder part of that. Precipitation, though, obviously also very much impacted. Kai noted that's going to be drier, with the La Nina tending to be drier in the south, and there's a few more wet pockets, maybe up in, say, the Pacific Northwest and in the Ohio Valley there. And then hurricane intensity, we just noted, the different temperatures of the various basins that those tropical systems are able to form in. A lot of times, El Nino may decrease Atlantic storms, while La Nina may do the opposite. And then marine life is something that maybe some people don't think about. What's going on under the surface. And again, that goes back to the basics of what El Nino and La Nina actually are. And it's that kind of redistribution of upwelling and such of the various temperatures of water. So the cold water kind of moving along closer to the surface or further away from the surface, depending on which system it is, that can change, the contents of the water, so the nutrients in the water for that marine life, and the marine life that's actually able to survive in it. So you can have some patterns where maybe you're seeing whales or other marine life that are typically more tropical further to the north because those warmer waters are further to the north, or vice versa. So yeah, it can impact all of it, and impacts the fishing industry and the economy because of those ripple effects. So they're definitely big things. Again, big picture. It's not going to be any one small event, but a very interesting phenomenon when you really dive into all of it.
Yep, and it does oscillate. It oscillates about every 4 to 7 years. It flops back and forth, and there's really good records if you want to look them up. It's at the Climate Prediction Center. They've got all the way since 1950 what various Ninos and Ninas have done. And it's pretty much clockwork. About every 4 to 7 years, it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So it's switching more into the Nina side now, and we'll just have to see how it all plays out going into winter.
All right. For the last question of the day, we have a submitted question that we're going to hear from Ben in Waukee.
Hi, I'm Ben from Waukee. My question about weather is why wind is so cold.
Thanks for your question, Ben. Why is wind so cold, Kai? Can you help us understand?
Sure. Why are we so cold when we get out of the shower and there's no towel nearby? Same thing. But we'll keep Ben's question and answer session very simple here. So in essence, it's hard for us to see unless you have some type of thermal imaging camera. There is this warm cushion that surrounds our body at all times. And that's why fans feel so good, because if we're going to wind up getting hot, we get this cushion of air around us. Well, okay, great. We get the cushion to blow away a little bit, and it kind of cools our skin down. So in weather terms, especially wind chill terms, now you've got really cold, dry air coming at your body. And number one, not that you'd be doing any sweating of any means, because that'll happen in the summertime, but that warm air cushion gets whisked away very quickly. And as a result, your surface of the skin can be very cold very quickly. If it gets too cold, we call that frostbite. And eventually that can get into your insides and cool your core body temperature down. And then all of a sudden now we're dealing with hypothermia. So wind is cold in that sense. But that's what's going on, is that cushion around your body's being blown away. Or if you had a layer of sweat on your arm, now all of a sudden you're taking water and you're changing its phase. And as a result, it's evaporating, which is actually taking energy out. It's cooling the process down. And so as a result, you're cooling because of that. And that's why folks that are outside and they comment, oh, it's such a nice breeze. That's probably why. But wind is the enemy in the wintertime for sure. It makes it feel so much worse.
And that's why it's so important to listen to Mom when she says you can't wear shorts, you got to wear your hat. because you want to be sure that you're keeping that little layer of warmth that's all around your skin. You want to be sure you're keeping that in and not letting it just, blow away so that you can stay nice and warm and safe.
Yeah, at least the best you can. And I've always been, I've always been a glove person, but I can understand the feel of mittens because you're putting all your fingers together instead of separating them out in the elements. So I can totally understand that. But it's your extremities you got to watch for too. And, being 6.5 feet tall, my hands stick out, my toes stick out. And so oftentimes I'm wearing pretty thick socks if we're out doing snow removal and things like that. And I try not to get caught without any hats or gloves around. So, for me, it's a ways away from the old heart, it's 4 or 5 feet. If you're looking at my toes, it's quite a journey for all that blood to get down there and back. So you just got to be careful with it. And especially on a windy, rainy day in the fall, you're probably going inside thinking, when's the crock pot done? I am freezing right now. And that is some of the chilliest experiences I've ever had. One of the coldest football games was Iowa State and Texas Tech when I was a student, and it rained in the 40s. Yeah. And I don't think I ever warmed up the rest of the night. We tried so hard, and I couldn't get it done. It was windy, cold, wet, just a really bad combo. And we lost the game, of course, because Iowa State was terrible when I was a student. Well, at least that made the night even better.
At least some things have changed, but wind is still cold.
Wind is still cold. Exactly. So hopefully, Ben, that answered your question. You just keep that warm air cushion around you, and you'll be all right going into wintertime.
All right. Thank you so much, Ben, for submitting that. If anybody else wants to submit either an audio question, a question that you want to email us, and send that just as text, we're happy to read it as well. But let us know what's on your radar. You can send us your questions to weatheredquestions@gmail.com to join the conversation. Until next week, though, stay safe.